It's the Political Free Agents podcast, and we're back for our Sunday episode. I just want to, instead of doing my normal hello here, I just want to welcome a special guest to the show. Good friend, grew up with him, great guy. Just want to introduce him to the audience. Want to welcome Chris. Welcome to the show, brother. How you doing, man?
Hey man, it's glad to be back. I know that I've been absent for a few weeks now. Life for us has kind of accelerated. My daughter Lauren Garza has, made one of the top softball teams in not only the state of Texas but the nation. It's a California-based organization that has a ton of tradition in California and have now come into Texas and really had a lot of success by the name of Athletics Mercado. So she's going to be able to get to do some really cool things here showcase wise. They will be playing every top team in the nation at some point in these tournaments. So there will be one in November that will have probably the top 50 teams in the country come all the way to Sugar Land, Texas to compete. So we're really proud of her. It's taken a lot of work, a lot of effort. My life is now usually spent in the evenings on a bucket hitting softballs. And, for a father, man, one of the greatest gifts that I've been given through the pandemic has been being able to spend that much time with my daughter and not only make an impression on her, but to be able to guide her through things that she's going to experience in life. The conversations that she and I have had are conversations that used to happen at the dinner table, for most families. That's one of the things that we've done in the household too, because our time is so spread out. We cook dinner every night, regardless. We sit down with each other and we have dinner as a family, and we say a quick, state of grace, because for, the life that we've built and now being able to pass it on to the kids, man, it's been a blessing to say the least, man.
Yeah, man, and that's what it all boils down to, man. That's what it's all about. That's one thing that I really, I'm always careful and always have to give the caveats because people who haven't watched the show for a while don't understand where we stand per se. But when we say we like these particular things about a pandemic, it's not that we like the pandemic. We don't like the death. We're not co-signing any of that. But one thing that during this time that I've really enjoyed was the time when things were locked down, because it was like, yeah, kids, you can't go anywhere. You're here. Now let's figure out some things to do. Let's talk. Let's have conversations. And my daughter is very much in the know of the things that's going on, like current events type stuff, And so we'd have great conversations about politics, things like that. So this is one of those rare times, man, where like families had to sit down, and I think it in some ways could have definitely helped, but there's always more irons in that fire for sure.
You know,
Um,
John, one of the things I'll say too, man, is when you talk about, one of the things that I've been very straightforward about is the mental health aspect of what the pandemic has kind of brought from the get-go. I knew because it affected me, not in any way from depression or whatnot, but, you start to, wonder, well, what happens if I lose a job? How will I provide? What if I die? What if my spouse, what if my parents die? You know what I mean? And you start to have those mental run throughs. But kids, our children, our nephews, our nieces, are experiencing things that we never had to experience as adolescents, especially not going into your teenage years, into your freshman year of high school, which are really awkward times in life usually. And one of the things that has been really a natural progression for me, but I know people who have struggled with it is, those kids have now had a lot of screen time, right? They've been able to be on their phones around the clock, on their iPads. They're forced to learn that way. And to me, that has got to be depressing as hell, because I know if I sit behind a screen, it's one of the reasons why I quit my other job, because I was behind a screen 8 hours a day and it just mentally wore on me. So
There's
luckily she hasn't.
actually, I was listening to Bomani Jones to that point specifically, and he had mentioned an article, but I didn't catch where it was. But there's basically kids who are experiencing like migraines and,
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
said one, I think she was like 9 years old after the first week of school, was just crying. And the mom was like, "What is going on?" And she was just like head hurt and just like struggling with the fact of sitting in front of a computer for 6 hours. Like, think about that. Like, that's not something they're used to. People say kids are always on their devices and stuff, but it's always like off, on, maybe 20 minutes of staring sort of thing, and then off. It's never like 6 straight hours of right in front of your face on
Yeah.
camera sort of, interaction. And it's a different ball game to be able to do that. It takes a
Absolutely.
lot of stamina to be able to sit in a seat, one place on camera for 6 hours, man. I guess it's different. So yeah, like you're right. You've been on this since jump, and it's definitely starting to show now that school has started back in a virtual environment.
Yeah. But in addition to that, um, the life experience that kids get from being out, in the real world environment, um, those peer pressures, those things like that have kind of somewhat disappeared, and now they've all went virtual. They didn't go anywhere; they're still there, but now they're all virtual. So instead of something happening where maybe only one person sees it, it's broadcast consistently. And it's one of the things that Lai and I have talked about, and Colton have talked about, is like, hey man, let us know how we can help you control this. I keep a monitor on her Twitter account, on her Facebook account, especially right now it's in an election season. People are really, really divisive one way or the other. There's really no middle ground, or if there is, it's kind of been eroded. Those are things that we have to keep tabs on, man. And it is, to be able to have gotten this time back with my kids, um, to talk to them about things, man, has been, it's incredible, and I've learned things about them that I didn't know, just because, in normal years, Jules is traveling, I'm driving every day to the ship channel and driving back. Um, those are things that kind of get either glossed over, or it's a deal with it, right? Just deal with it. We'll deal with it later. And you kind of forget about it or whatever. And it's kind of always there and undealt with. So I've seen both of them grow into different kids, more mature kids. And man, that has been, golly, dude, that's been such a beautiful blessing to be able to have back.
Yeah. So along those lines, man, we have a strong sense of a lot of people, and it's been split along party lines, but not worried about the party lines here. But you have like a side that says we need to get back to normal, a side that says no, we need to lock down or stay where we are, or lock down even more. Um, but there's a segment of the country, multiple segments of the country, that are not only dealing with the pandemic, but we had, a hurricane come through, tear through West Louisiana, East Texas, and there's another hurricane coming through, potentially about to hit Louisiana or New Orleans
Stella, right?
specifically
Is that
this
her name,
time.
Stella?
I believe so. And so that one's coming through now. And then in California, this is something that we haven't talked a lot about, because I was trying to see really what this was going to turn into. But this is something that has been pretty massive, and something that I've heard from multiple people across multiple states. And I'm talking about northern
Yeah,
states
man.
like Montana.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about like Arizona. Like, I had a friend post a picture yesterday from Arizona of just the bad weather and the soot and things like that that are happening there in Arizona. And this is in Phoenix, right? And so, but these wildfires are started over in Cali, but in Phoenix, we're seeing the effects. And then it went from California to Oregon. Montana also has their own fires, but then it's also getting that wind blowing their direction as well. And
Yeah.
so we started seeing these red skies pop up. And this has just been, and not in like the, oh my God, I'm so interested, but this has been a fascinating thing to watch happen, because this is like so broad and so far spread and such a big impact that this picture down here, this is not like a night skyline. This is a red sky during the day. And I had a friend from the San Francisco area post it, and he's a designer. So my first thought was, oh, Steve is, he didn't slap together a red filter on Photoshop. No, like it was literally like a strong, bright red in San Jose, which is where he's at, just south of San Fran. And so this has been pretty massive to see happening. And so this article here on Axos says California is being pushed to extremes. The LA Times reports in today's lead story, and the record heat, fires, and pollution all have one thing in common. They were made worse by climate change. And they said, why does it matters? There's convergence. Their convergence is perhaps the strongest signal yet that calamity climate scientists have warned of for years, that it isn't far off in the future. It is here today and can no longer be ignored. Scientist Zeke Hosfather said people who have lived in California for 30 to 40 years are saying this is unprecedented. It has never been this hot. It has never been this smoky. And so like this is a big deal, right? And of course, people are making this political because they're saying, well, it's the Democrats, right? Like these, the Democrats, poorly run state, the Democrats are doing a terrible job. This is, all because Democrats, have created a terrible state. I was going to say country. They've created a terrible state. And let me actually share this one more time. I know those on audio won't be able to see it, but let me actually share this one graphic here that shows the Western wildfires. So this is a picture of the Western wildfires. We have 4 in Alaska, 15 in Washington, 14 in Oregon, 24 in California, 1 in Nevada, 12 in Idaho, 9 in Montana, 2 in Wyoming, 5 in Colorado, 5 in Utah, 5 in Arizona, 1 in New Mexico. Now, if you don't know the geography of the states, that is everything basically west of Texas. Draw a line from like the panhandle of Texas up, and that is everything west of Texas in the United States.
Hey, John, have you seen any actual data as to how many millions of acres are actually on fire? Have you seen that?
I actually didn't. I'll see if they actually say it here, but I don't know if I haven't seen it like across all of the states at all. But I mean, this is something that has been kind of clear just from like a human perspective of growing up in a very hot, kind of murky type place. In South Texas is, very humid, stuff like that. Like, we grew up with a certain level of heat and things. And I know for sure that it always, once I moved back, I was like, oh yeah, this is not what I remember. Like this is a little bit hotter than what I remember. Arizona was new to me. I felt like, I don't know, maybe this is what it normally is, but we've been getting like record setting heat temperatures for a while. We've seen a massive increase in terms of very big hurricanes coming through. It used to have like maybe 2 or 3 in your lifetime in this area come through. But now, like we're seeing massive hurricanes coming through, every 2-3 years, right? Maybe 5 years or so. We're just getting these massive hurricanes that are coming. And right now we're about to see 2 hit the Gulf Coast within the matter of, well, really there were 3, but it hit the Gulf Coast and caused some pretty big damage in the last 2 months, so some things definitely changed in the climate. And I think what people get caught up on is this idea of climate change and those, Gore and all of those who are selling something with climate change. And I get it, but forget about how we got here. Let's just deal with we're here and let's address it, right? Call it what you want. Call it climate change, call it, whatever, climate wars, it doesn't matter. But we're here. And because we're here, we have to deal with it. And without dealing with it, we end up seeing something like in Oregon, this article here, another one here on Axios. Um, it says West Coast fires kill at least 31 as Oregon braces for mass fatality event. I think about that. And fire isn't like water. Like that thing starts spreading. It's crazy. And so it says of note, 10 deaths have been confirmed in Oregon, 20 in California, 1 in Washington State this fire season. Most fatalities have occurred in that past week from this article. It said the death tolls are expected to rise sharply in the coming days.
Hey John,
So
share that and let me just give you this data real quick before I ask you to do this. But as of right now, this is as of 8 a.m. September 11th. So this was yesterday. It looks like a total of 3.1 million acres as of right now have burned just in California alone. 900,000 in Oregon, 625,503 in Washington, for a total of 5.5 million. So essentially, it looks like that is roughly about the same geographic size as Connecticut from what I'm seeing right here. Now, lightning has caused many of the wildfires, and high temperatures and drought are helping spread them. But in addition to that, I know I did see something the other day to where someone was having a gender reveal party, which, by the way, don't be that selfish because no one really gives a damn what you're having. Just reveal it and go on with it. That's it. We don't care. Trust me on that. We don't care. They had some type of device that was an explosive device that apparently caused, an explosion, and it caused a fire that began to spread. I don't remember where that was at in California, but it happened in California. So, it just.
I think that was the start of it. I don't think there were any fires happening. And then
Correct.
that gender reveal is what kind of sparked it all. And I don't know, I can't say 100%, but I believe the embers from California that were spreading in the wind is what started kicking off fires in other states as well. Not all of them, because it's just been very dry. I believe Montana got up their own fire started.
Speak to that article that you shared with us early this morning, but also read the excerpt about, it's not long, but it's about the guy that when he pulled up and figured, read that real quick, John, because that was, I read it this morning, and I made it about halfway through and closed it. And I was like, I'm not going to finish this article. And then I went back and reread the whole thing all at once. And it was, we're kind of desensitized to it because we don't see it here. Most of the East Coast isn't seeing it. They will have their own, reckoning, which is through hurricanes. But I also want to speak to something else too, real quick, about what exactly this gentleman experienced. So read this real quick, John. And when you're done with it, I want to say something about it.
Yeah, so this article here, it was from a paper in Oregon, OregonLive.com, and it says the desperate fight to save his family ends in tragedy. And I can give a bit of a synopsis on the story here, but I was just completely blown away by this. So his name is Chris Toft. Gets emotional after a group of volunteers left to continue searching for his missing son, Wyatt Toft, who is 13, and his dog, Duke, in Staten, Oregon. This was Wednesday, September the 9th. Dozens of people are reported missing in Oregon as two large wind-blown wildfires rage across the state. At least 4 fatalities have been reported. Sadly, 13-year-old Wyatt and his grandmother, 71-year-old Peggy Mossy, are among them. So the story of this one is Chris left to go to pick up a trailer. I guess they were trying to load up their house, pack up. And as he was going to go pack up his house, get the trailer, his wife and son, they were getting their things ready. And so the way the story starts off, um, I accidentally messed around and closed it, hit the wrong button on my little device over here, um, and it ends up closing Safari. So the way it starts off, this is just going to be the first part of the article. It says Christoph blew past the blockade. His green Jeep Cherokee aimed for the bows of the raging Beachy Creek fire. And I believe Beachy Creek is like, I guess, the area. It was around 4 a.m. Tuesday morning, and he was desperately searching for his wife, son, and mother-in-law. The family lived 4.5 miles north, 4.5 miles up north, Fork Road, southeast, about 10 minutes from Lyons and 30 minutes from Salem. Halfway there, the road flanked by walls of fire and fallen trees. He stopped for a man whose arm was badly burned. The man wanted a ride but didn't get in when he found out Chris was headed deeper into the wildfire. Chris agreed to pick him up on the way down, but the man wondered out loud whether he'd make it. Back in the Jeep, struggling to navigate a road once so familiar but now shrouded by smoke-filled darkness, Chris almost ran over what looked like a bikini-clad woman on the road. Once he was closer, he realized she was wearing underwear. Her hair was singed, her mouth was almost black, and her bare feet were severely burned. He impatiently tried to help her into his car, explaining how he needed to find his wife and son, feeling like she was resisting. Finally, she spoke. I am your wife. I was like, this
Hey, but read what he
as
says
an
after that
opening.
though about. Hey, read what he says after that though about the way he felt, because that's what stuck out to me.
You mean towards, oh, it said he felt like he was going to pass out. He thought he would start crying. Instead, he said something turned off in him. He didn't feel anything. And so what he ended up doing from there was trying to turn around on the, mind you, think about it. Fire on the side of the road, right? Like it's the whole road is filled with fire on the side, and he's trying to turn around with this trailer so he can head back away from the wildfires and go try to find their son Wyatt. He ends up getting his wife into the hospital. She ends up going to get care, and he's trying to go back to find his son. um, he can't find him. He goes to visit his wife. His wife is like, don't come back till you find Wyatt. He's mad at the police because they can't do anything. By now, the fire has come up even closer. And so they're not able to go as far as they did before. And so finally, um, I think it was a couple days later, they ended up letting him know that they found his son. And he was in the driveway of their home with the dog on him and the grandma in the passenger seat. And they were burned up. Like,
You know what
I mean,
stuck
you
out to
you you
me?
can't read this without feeling
Yeah,
some kind of way
that's why I
about.
closed it. That's why I closed it. That's why I closed it. And right now, you know, in a normal year, we kind of go through life, and you go through the ebbs and flows of just kind of really dealing with things that come your way. And what ends up happening is you suppress a lot of those feelings, and at some point they will resurface and reappear, and you have to deal with them in the form of anger, in the form of depression, alcoholism, whatever. It's going to affect you in some way, shape, or form. Right now, because we've been quarantined for so long, California is a little bit more stringent than everybody else right now, but we have been more in touch with all of our senses and emotion than probably any other time in our adult lives, and definitely in adolescent lives. So this is what I meant by going through and wondering what mental health was going to look like, because these are very real things that we have realized. We've just turned our feelings off and desensitized them. And I realized that in myself when someone called me and or called my wife actually, and really close friend of the family, and her father had passed away. And this is someone that we had sat down and had dinner with before, barbecued with, and whatnot. And my response was, I was like, "Wow, her dad passed away, really? Damn, that's crazy." And then I just went on doing what I would normally do. Um, a friend of mine's mom passed away. The exact same thing. It was like, wow, that's great. And you just go on doing what you're going to do, because we're in a state of, I don't know that I would call it survival right now, because I don't think that's the correct term, but we've had to adapt and overcome. And it is, for those of us that grew up the way we did, I would say for people that are probably 30 and over, the way we were brought up by uncles, grandfathers, dads, things like that, we were taught to suppress those feelings because it was a sign of weakness, right? Asking for help was often a sign of a time of weakness. And that's why you see things like men that refuse to go to the doctor, men that have something as simple as prostate cancer that turns into a death, a death wish, suicides, alcoholism, drug abuse. Those are all things that our generation of people has suppressed. Those people above us have suppressed. We've never been terribly good at dealing with our emotions. And now that we're having to do it with children that are more emotive, that is a tough thing to balance, man. I mean, it is hard. And there have been times where I have absolutely almost lost it. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't know how to deal with it. And when I read his response about something turned off in him, I didn't know it at the time that I was speaking to it, when I initially raised the issue of mental health. But that's what I was thinking about, and I just didn't know it at the time. But I think something has somewhat turned off into all of us, because for me now, there's no middle ground. It's like either, damn, that's crazy, I know that I can't really do anything about it, or I'll read something like that article and I'm just going to cry my ass off. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no middle ground for me right now. And I know that if I'm saying that, there's a lot of people dealing with those same emotions.
Yeah, man. Little John has had some struggles, man, just dealing with life, and he's definitely one of those people that they say kids don't like going outside. And that dude, if he can, he'll spend all day outside doing something, riding his bike, going to the little mall over here, the outdoor mall, or hanging out with friends or something like that, playing music. He's not big into, I mean, he still likes video games, but he doesn't play much anymore. So the pandemic was definitely tougher for him, because he just was cooped up, just couldn't do anything, and he is definitely um, emotional in a way that I believe I definitely see myself in him in the way that he's emotional. But to what you're saying there is, I wasn't allowed to express any of that back then, right? I couldn't do that sort of, emotional outburst sort of thing where it's like, I just need to cry, right? Not in front of the men back then. No, with my mom, sure, I was sure she would have let me. But if it got back to my brothers or my dads or my uncles, and like, boy, you was in there crying, it was that sort of thing. And so in dealing with John, trying to get him to like, hey man, you deal with your emotions, express yourself, blah, blah, blah. It's different for me because I recognize I have like limitations when it comes to dealing with a lot of emotion in that sense. Even though I am emotional, just like dealing with it. It's like we've been geared in a way. And so that is very difficult to navigate, man. And, to this point, like with COVID, I went and got a test yesterday. On Monday, I was real sick, man. And I went fishing, hung out for the day, did quite well, if I might add. Had a pretty good day on the boat. But I kept thinking like, man, I think I got food poisoning or something. I had eaten some Jack in the Box on the way out. We were just trying to grab something. The taco place was closed because it was a holiday. So it was like, crap. We were trying to get some breakfast tacos, couldn't get them. So we grabbed some Jack in the Box. Man, all day I was burping. I just like that rotten egg burp. And it's just like, oh, like this is terrible. So man, I get home, jump in the shower so I can lay down, you know, end up getting out the shower, and I was just throwing up, for like 5 hours, off and on before I just completely passed out. but it was like extreme pain in my stomach. And I mean, it was bad, man. And so after that, like the rest of the week, I've just felt very lethargic. Like it's been very difficult for me to like get up and move about. I just kind of felt like a weight was on me in a sense. And finally, yesterday, I was like, man, I need to go get tested. I just need to know for sure what's up because I don't want any surprises, sort of things. And so I went and got tested, man. And it was the funny thing, not funny, but I just sat in there looking at, there was a college football game on TV, and I'm the only one in there. It's a 24-hour spot, maybe 9:30 or so by the time I got in there. And I'm just sitting there just thinking like, man, this is just odd, right? Like going in and to get tested to find out if I have this thing that is killing so many people. And it kind of made it a little more real. And I'm saying this to the point of what you're saying is like, I think we've kind of all got desensitized a little bit because it's like 190,000 have died now. And then it's like, oh man, it's 195. And then if it just keeps going up, man, we hit 200,000, you know, and it's just like, we say that, but we're not, I don't know, there's like a certain thing, like you say, like that turned off a bit. Like it's gotten so far out of hand that where we used to get outraged at 100, now we're looking at hundreds of thousands. And it's just like, oh man, hundreds of thousands. Man, that's terrible. And so as I sat there, went in to get the test and those sort of things, the one that goes in the nose, yeah, it's not fun. It ain't terrible, but it's not fun. And then they prick your finger, take your blood, and do that sort of thing, you know. But they, I think they definitely were trying to make a little money though. They're like, oh, you have insurance? We're gonna do a full checkup. Doctor comes in, asks questions. Nurse comes in, asks extra questions. They do the test. I'm like, this little, you know, $100 test. y'all jokers was trying to make some extra bread here when y'all saw insurance.
Hey man, Paul and I had a conversation about that a while back because we were talking about the length of stays that some people were having at hospitals, and you know the reason that some of the saturation points were what they were was because they were just billing the hell out of insurances for people.
Yeah.
You know, once they could figure out that they could do ventilators, blood transfusion, you know, those type of things.
All the big money items.
All the big money items. You know what I'm saying? And when
Yeah.
you could, and the reason we even got into that conversation was I asked the magic question. I said, how much is it for a bag of plasma? And he laughed and he goes, I think it was something like $100 if I'm not mistaken. It may have even been less than that, but it wasn't a number that was big enough for me to be like, wow. So if you remember, at some point, the state of Texas had purchased something like 3.2 million dosages of remdesivir, which is an anti-inflammatory drug.
Right.
Well, not only are they making money off of the state, making money off of the hospital, now they're making money off of insurances as well. It's a three-way deal. They're making a killing. I would imagine, and I'm sorry to pivot off of what we were talking about, but I would imagine that at the end of this year, insurers and hospitals are going to have insane profits, bro. Insane profits.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, that's gonna happen.
You know,
I'm telling you, like the full workup that they did yesterday on me, completely unnecessary. Right? Like, I mean, obviously they're gonna do blood pressure, they're gonna check your, you know, temperature, those sort of things. Cool, no big deal. But she literally said, oh, you have insurance, so then we're gonna have a doctor check you out. And I wasn't thinking about it till I got in there, and the doctor's talking to me and he's asking me these questions, and I'm like, but I answered all of this. Like it literally is on the form. You asked me all of these questions on the form. There's nothing new that I'm telling you or that you're asking me. And then he walks out and he's like, all right, we should have the results in 10 to 15 minutes. Then the nurse comes in and the nurse is like, okay, my turn. And all the thing I thought about was, oh, your turn to bill. Because I remember when we had JR, we got a bill, like, they give you the itemized list. And I remember it said
Yeah.
a doctor's name that billed us for like $1.79 or something. And I was like, what doctor billed us for $1.79? There was a doctor that was coming in. He was a resident, actually. He came in, and he came in with another doctor, and the doctor asked questions, how she's doing. My wife was still, you know, sedated and whatnot. It's like, well, how's she doing? I'm like, well, she's still sedated. Nothing really, going on. And then the other doctor asked, a question. They were in there, I don't know, a minute and a half, right? And I remember seeing this on a thing, like, why did you even come in here? Like, you had no, like, there was no need. You know how long the sedation lasts. So there's really nothing for you to come in here about at this point. And then you brought two people and you charged for both of them. And that's the only thing I was thinking last night was, you guys saw insurance and you were like, let's get this money. And it was kind of gross to me. Like, afterwards, I was like, yeah, they just did a lot of stuff really for nothing. All they need to do, the first lady did the test, popped the swab in, pricked my finger, took the results back. I could have sat in there by myself, looked at the animal drawings on the wall, and just chilled. That was it. I didn't need anybody else. Just give me the results. I understand that this was probably um, some food poisoning, maybe, or maybe flu, whatever. But I just needed to know the results. But instead, all of this happened, and I can watch. I'm bringing it up because when the what do they call it, explanation of benefits comes up, I'm gonna open up that explanation of benefits and say how much they charge the insurance for that. But the COVID test by itself, I think, was 100, like 20
That's
bucks
it.
for one or 100 bucks for the other or something like
Yep.
that. And they ended up doing both. And I'm
Hey,
like, cool.
John, but
So,
you
but
said
the results were negative. So I'll say, go ahead and kill the suspense there. I've never
you
had it, and I don't have it now.
you said the magic word though, that and you say it all the time. It starts with a B. What is it?
Which one?
Them billables.
Go to Yeah, man.
Them
Yeah.
billables, dog.
Hey, I'm telling you, I recognize the billables. I recognize the game, man.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
recognize it. And so
Yeah.
this is like part of it, man, is that, when we look at the early days of this, and this is a bit of a segue into um, what was going on early on. I remember talking about this a lot with people early on in the days, and a lot of the Trumpers were like, Trump never downplayed COVID. He never did that. He, from the jump, he said it was serious and this sort of thing. And, I mean, I used to go down the list of, like, look, man, this is not what happened. This dude's been downplaying COVID from the rip. Like, this is what he's been doing. And it's just all right there in front of you. Like, it's not like we're special. You just got to open your eyes and not look with partisan eyes at this stuff. Um, but this is fascinating. We're not going to play the audio clips, but this is fascinating, just to see, because if it came out only in text, people would say, he misunderstood. What was the context, sort of thing. But we have complete context, because Bob Woodward, who has interviewed pretty much every president, gets an interview with Trump, and Trump tells him outright, I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic. And this was March 19th when he said this. Uh, and it was like, yeah, we knew you were playing this thing down. And I don't know if they have the other clip in here, but he also talked to him in February, early February. He was talking to him about it as well. Um, here you go, February 7th.
And before you read that real quick, it ain't like he just got one soundbite. This was 18 conversations over almost 10
Yes.
hours.
Yes. And so this one from February 7th, he told Woodward. Now, mind you, like, if you think about it from a timeline perspective, the context, in February, Trump was telling people it wasn't that bad. It's not as bad as the flu, blah, blah, blah. And so here he is telling Woodward, it goes through the air. That's always tougher than the touch. You don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air, and that's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's more deadly than even your strenuous flus. But here is Trump on Twitter stating, flu counts and that sort of thing, and he's talking about a few weeks later, they quote him here saying that within a couple of days, the cases are going to go down to 0. And then he says on March 7th, mind you, they're all saying this is only old people at this time. On March 7th, he tells them, just today and yesterday, some startling facts came out. It's not just older, young people too, plenty of young people. This is what we like. This is like why we exist, because not about like being right about any of this stuff, right? It's just to help people see the difference in what's going on, to remove those glasses. And we all kind of have them, right? We all, even though we are political free agents, we all still do that sometimes, where we see things out of our own perspective and we have our own partisan bent, right? Pick your topic. It can change per topic, but we do this. We talk about these things. We press each other. We challenge each other, specifically because when we see BS, we know BS, right? And you have to be able to communicate and effectively call out these sort of things. So we knew this dude's been downplaying it while he knew it was worse than what it was, and he didn't want to create a panic. But matter of fact, I'll put it in the show notes. Bo of the Fifth Column did a video where he broke down all the things that Trump has fear-mongered over. I mean, caravans coming from South America up through Mexico, people crossing over the border, the what is it, the MS-16 or whatever. You got the gangs of people that are coming over. You got all of these immigrants coming from all these S-hole countries. Let's get some different ones. Like he's BLM, the Democrat-run countries, they're taking away your nation, and the NFL players, and like he's fear-mongered on all these things about how all these things are like they're coming for you. He's doing it like every day this week. He's like, they're coming for you. They're trying to destroy the suburbs. All this dude does is try to create a panic that will benefit him. But the panic in the other direction, if people really took this seriously, would have hurt the economy. So you can't do that, right? Can't create that panic. So anyway, when I saw this, man, it was just like, we knew. And like nobody can defend it. It's indefensible. Like you can't say that's not what happened. We have actual audio tape.
It's not indefensible. It's not indefensible though, because these people don't care. They don't care. One of the most telling statements I've ever seen was from Jerry Falwell, who just resigned from Liberty University as their president. Correct, John? But
yep.
One of the things that he said in an interview recently went along the lines of this. Actually, I think I may even have the quote direct. He said, "There's nothing that the president can do to lose my support, because as a Christian, which he's the furthest thing from, he's a profiteer. We operate under the assumption that everyone is equally as bad," which is also a fraud statement.
Absolutely.
Because anyone who has ever spent any real time in a church, and I'm not talking about a white church with the white version of Catholicism or whatever it is, Southern Baptist that you want to convey, Episcopalian, the listing goes on. But when you come into, Hispanic churches and Black churches, those churches, those services are long for a reason, and they're rooted and based in Scripture for a reason. But more importantly, they're rooted and based in very emotive prayer, because individuals are truly realizing that they are serving something that's higher to themselves. So to make statements like that are just purely infactual. It's a cop-out is what that is. And that's the way I see it. But, when you have individuals that are saying things like that, that they don't care what he does. The reason that they don't care what he does is because it's very simple. He provides enough diversion and enough distraction that pretty much they can operate almost at will and seemingly get away with things. And you look at what it took to finally bring him down, that would have crucified most men in any situation. And for him, it largely got swept under the radar. I know what would happen to me if I was in a photo with another woman with my pants unbuttoned. So, you know,
Right.
and it wouldn't, my wife wouldn't say, well, you know, everyone's equally as bad, so it's okay, you made a mistake.
Yeah,
Um,
we're
but
Christians. It's okay.
but to the other point, most relationships, when you get to that point to where you have that type of power and you operate, um, you know, under that type of money and connection influence, your relationship is more of just a business agreement. You know,
Oh yeah.
I don't think any of those people truly love and care about each other, um, because their emotions aren't geared that way. They may have at one time, but it's changed. And if you've ever watched, oh man, what is that show? It's on the tip of my tongue. But there's a show on HBO that follows a evangelist and his family, and it actually is the guy. It actually has the guy from Eastbound and Down. If you've ever watched that show, they're real vulgar. They're not for kids. I would never recommend them for kids. But the main minister, gets caught in a situation where he was doing cocaine and having sex with women that um, someone recorded, and they started to try to blackmail him. And it's funny to see the relationship dynamic with the way he treats the church, his wife, and his kids, because it's a very real thing. And to see it portrayed like that in a comedic fashion, um, that's the highest form of truth that you'll ever get.
Is it the righteous gemstones?
That's it. The righteous gemstones, man.
Hmm. I
It
hadn't seen
is
that.
incredible, incredible, but it's extremely vulgar.
Yeah, I might have to check it out.
It's hilarious. Watch it at 4 a.m. and you'll love it.
Yeah, I might have to check it out, man. But that's one thing that I mean, you know, you and I have had enough conversations, man, that I'm extremely critical of my Christian brethren, man. And as somebody that has taken this seriously for over 20 years now, it's like when I see the state of things, you know, at some point you do have to realize that there are certain profiteers out there that are just looking for profit,
Man,
right?
one of the things that I'm going to say about you, and I can say it because I've known you for long enough, is I remember when you moved back to Houston and got heavily involved in the church in Pearland, and there was a period of time where you had no time to do anything else because you were so heavily involved in the church. And I could tell you that you believed in it, but I always felt that you seemed to question the message um, that they were conveying, and I didn't really know why. And then at one point, when I saw you completely cut it off and walk away from it, that was the same epiphany that I had, you know, back in right around 2006. You know, when Jules and I got married. You know, the Catholic Church itself is just, there was a reason why I had to walk away from it, man. And I saw you do the exact same thing.
Yeah, man, it's just one of them things that it's because you're rooted in something, right? And I always tell people that um, somebody that grew up as a Muslim is no different than somebody that grew up as a Christian. They were in an environment that trained them to be a certain thing, right? You know, like we grew up in the same town, but your heritage, your history, you were in Catholicism. I was in Southern Baptist, right? And so like we were rooted in something, and it's hard to like change those core roots. And it really became a thing where it turned from me spending so much time trying to help build the church into relationship. And it was like, yeah, the relationship part is getting missed, all too often. And that's the part that, because we miss that part, that's how you end up being Jerry Falwell. That's how you get to that point where you got your wife out here with the pool boy having threesomes, or you sitting in the corner watching, or whatever he was doing, and handling himself while another dude's handling his wife. Like, you get into those kind of things when there's no relationship. It's like you're doing the business of church, but you don't have the relationship with God, and you've lost focus. And it's so easy to do it, and it's just like a perpetual cycle that happens. So
I'm going to say this, as someone who grew up in the Catholic Church, and I went to Mount Pilgrim. I mean, I know what it's like to be in a black service. I've experienced it multiple times in my life. It's amazing, because if you've never been to it, it's unlike anything else that you've ever been to, especially if you don't even call it, Hispanics call it the gospel, black churches call it the word, but when you hear the word preach the right way, man, it is an extremely powerful thing to hear. And especially when you see older folks around you that,
yep.
Once they start to close them eyes, and they get that little rock forward and back,
Mm-hmm.
it just got real. It just got real.
They feeling something.
There's
a power to church, right? Like, there's a power to being in a congregation with people, and like something, it's basically like a weekly, like motivational speech, in a sense of like self-help, trying to help you grow and be better as a person, right? And so there's extreme value in that. If it's not being abused, there's extreme value. And I still believe Harvest Point is a phenomenal church, mainly because Pastor Scott is so real. Like, he and I have had these conversations, and he tries he tries his best to protect against that aspect. And not all pastors do, man. And and it's just like different aspects, man, of like Jerry Falwell from Liberty University is about to walk away with, I think, a $10 million payday, because he got caught in this situation, is having to resign.
Right.
$10 million, the payday. So his salary was way up there anyway, right? And so this idea of like Liberty University being some Christian organization that's helping, people, blah, blah. Man, it's a profit engine. They wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't.
And all he's going to do is go into politics.
Most likely. Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't run for office and try to parlay this into something. It wouldn't shock me at all.
Here's where I was going with that, John, because there is, and minority people have a different relationship with religion than our white counterparts. I'm not gonna try to exploit any racial reason, but when you go back and you look at the role that religion has played all the way back to our African ancestors, all the way back to our Indian ancestors, prayer was a means of survival for us. So when we say that we have walked away from that, that is an extremely powerful thing to say, because it's not like you have to explain it to your parents. My mother was really, really upset about it. Jules's mom was upset about it. There is a whole different conversation that's had with that, because she's still very active in the church. My mom still goes to church. My dad, I can count on one hand probably how as many times that I've seen him step foot in a church. And I noticed that from a very young age, and he never pawned that off on me. I think because he probably knew that I would come around at some point, and I did. And when I did, I asked him about it, and his answer was very simple. He's like, son, it's one thing to gather and pray out of a book. He said, but there's another thing to have faith. And he said, I will always have my faith. And I fully believe that as well.
Yeah, without a doubt, bro. And Big Jim is one of those guys that, the things that he does, man, like he's living from that perspective of being a godly man. in the sense of like all the people he's helped and lent a hand to. Like that's the kind of stuff, man, that, you know, for the longest it's just been for me of, you know, I'm going to live my life a certain way, right? You know, I've seen pastors leave the church and then next thing you know, they out with chicks doing dirt and cussing up a storm and doing this other thing, you know, and it's like they just turned like a complete 360. And when they came back around, it was like, oh, you not that dude. Like you were putting on a show with your, you know, tight suit on and your clean cut. You're putting on a show. This is who you really are, you know. And it's like, dude, just like live your truth, man. Like if you cuss, you cuss, right? Like that's who you are, whatever, you know, but don't come out here lying, faking the funk, because when that happens and you get exposed, you now hurt other people who are walking and looking up to you, you know. And so that whole thing, man, is it's just like a big ball of yarn that if you pull on it too much and people start getting exposed, you know, it's definitely something that can hurt a lot more people, you know. And I know a lot of really, really, really good, you know, people in the church, man, that doing great work. You know, but I was talking to my wife not too long ago and I was like, man, think about all these churches, right? Let's, and I don't pick on Osteen a lot because I know he has earned a lot of his wealth outside of the church. But so I'm not focusing on Osteen, I'm focusing on the church. And if you look at how much money the church is making, and Osteen's salary isn't massive, but the church pays him a good salary. He gets all these donations, and like they make millions upon millions a year. Why aren't there more economic development programs from the church? Why aren't they, you know, now I know there's like food pantries, they do massive amounts of food pantries and things like that. And I'm like, great, I get it. There's donations that go out and that sort of stuff. But we have these localized churches who are going out across the world and praying with people, but their city is jacked up. Right. And so it's like the same reason why like money in politics is a bother for me. Money in church is a bother for me as well. When I see that the way that sometimes it can be abused and misused. And, you know, I know we went on a wild tangent here, but that Falwell thing just kind of gets to that same point of all the money that people were donating. I'm not sure that they donated so that they could give a bailout package for somebody that just got outed for his quote unquote sexual deviancy, you know, which, dude, hey, if that's the relationship you want to have, man, by all means, you do what you want to do. I have no problem with you going out there, slipping in with the pool boy and doing your thing. It's your marriage, bro. But because of those actions, now that university has to give up $10 million, which I don't
But
even
you know
know if
what?
it's a real university.
But at the same time, though, it's not a wild tangent because being able to justify that and take statements that he made that quote unquote, you know, I operate under the assumption that everyone is equally as bad. Um, the reason that I say that is a junk statement is because it's a cop out, is it's an excuse. Um, and what's happened with that and what and how we've progressed to this point is you know, we've always operated under the assumption that we are a Christian nation. Cool, whatever. You want to die on that hill, so be it. But 2 days ago, we you know had a remembrance for 9/11, right? 19 years, and it was during that time period that two things got heavily weaponized: religion and political allegiance. Right? You're either with us or you're against us. And what they started to realize, and I say that to say this because both of these statements are very true. You know, there's a reason why they weaponized both, because they realized that with a population that was aging, with as a voting bloc and how they traditionally voted, with a younger generation that was moving not only more to the center but even center left, and now you see some of them that are fully hard left. They started to realize what a problem that was going to be 20 years down the road, which is where we are now. And so what they've done is they've weaponized that, and they've practiced, and they have dialed in that message to the point where now that football has started back up, and you see athletes, and not just black ones anymore, starting to take a knee again. They figured out ways to, you know what, let the national anthem play. We're going to do it after the fact, right? And people are losing their mind over it, because now they're having to deviate their message again and say, well, you know what, we don't want to see this, respect the flag, just play ball. We have seen it die, that message evolved from, it's a shame that you're kneeling and respect the flag, to do it on your own time, to do it peacefully, to now, guess what? We've done it peacefully. We just shut up and dribble. We don't want to hear a damn thing from you. And the fact that those statements are being made goes to show that the original messages was always a junk message to begin with. And I sent this to you last night, but, Naomi Osaka, I absolutely love. California girl, biracial, is dating a rapper from Compton. And they were at the, I think it was the US Open yesterday, and she won it. Well, she has been coming out with her hair fully natural, fully curled up. You can see it. Wearing messages on not only her shirt, but her face mask. And, one of the messages that a reporter asked her yesterday was 7 different tournaments, 7 different masks, 7 different names. What message are you trying to convey? And her throwback to the reporter was, well, what did you get out of it? What message did you get out of it? And when you put that back on somebody else and they have to look introspectively about that, most of them will pause and either get scared as hell or try to pivot to another message or say something extremely divisive. And the reason being is because that message they can no longer control. This notion of the American dream was always true, I believe, up until the around the 80s, when Reagan was elected, and you started seeing this quote unquote devotion to capitalism, right? And how you always go back to kind of the ancient Greeks. I've said this, I've always looked back and I started looking at it during the pandemic. And, one of the things that Nemesis would do was Nemesis existed to punish extremely prideful, extremely selfish individuals, right? That was in ancient Greek history, that was a crime of death. That's where, the Greek god of Narcissus comes in, right? Is those two go hand in hand. To see what we've become and to still try to hold on to our values as a Christian nation is an absolute mockery of this country, because we are the biggest let's not and say we did. And we try to pawn that off on everybody else and tell them that they are living wrong and that they, need to quote unquote clean their own house. And it's been amazing to see, like I said, statements like Falwell has made, because that is rooted all the way to the fact that when Reagan began to, take government oversight away from a lot of these things, and you started looking at savings and loan crisis, mortgage collapses, market collapses, how much liquidity has not only left the market out of
the massive debt increase
out of ordinary citizens, but guess where it went? It now transferred into the hands of the wealthiest individuals in this country. Who gives a damn if the market's at almost 30,000? You know how many people that's affected that make under $100,000 a year? Probably very few. Probably very, very few. John, we always have the conversation, John, that if individuals realized, what we talk about on the side, they would be absolutely mind blown, because we figured out a way to position ourselves in that. And a lot of that has to do with not only our devotion to, each other, to bouncing ideas off of each other. Man, I called you with a conversation that I was scared out of my mind because I was having to make a reckoning and a decision or something. And you were able to give me a true piece of value to make that decision. And it's a financial decision ultimately overall. Not everybody has that luxury. So people cheerleading for the fact that, oh my God, the market's at 30,000. If you're only seeing that in your 401k, you're losing part of the game, though. Losing it. And
Without a
so,
doubt.
This notion that goes all the way back to, when Reagan took office and began to strip that government oversight, when Glass-Steagall, was stripped away in the late 90s, that led to what happened in the 2000s. There's a reason why, we as minorities have been marginalized, and that's because we have endured all of that, and we have still come. And even though that part of the American dream was never our dream, we now have struggled and adapted and overcome enough stuff to where we're here. And now that it's our turn, the other side of this country says, we'd rather burn it down before we give it to y'all.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
And that's exactly why they can give their devotion and make statements the way Falwell did to someone like Donald Trump, because it's not that we operate under the notion that everybody's imperfect. It's that they need someone to be able to justify that. And it just so happens to be rooted in religion. So that way they have what they believe is something to justify it. And it's all a fraud. And at some point, those chickens are going to come home to roost. I'm just wondering when that is.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a reckoning, but I think because of the Christian leadership in the country has been so silent about this because of their typical support for the Republican Party, that they just, shoot. I was having a conversation with my wife last night about Pence, because she's like, Pence is like, he's just standing around like accepting this kind of behavior. Like he's not. And I was like, we don't know what's happening behind closed doors. I don't know what he's saying in public. He ain't standing up to those principles and morals, and I have so many people, man, that, I talk to, and there's a buddy that I probably get on his nerve because I keep pressing him about stuff, but he just goes in and over about abortion and this sort of thing. And I'm like, dude, you got to understand that it's not just liberals. Republicans have abortions too. It's not just liberals that have abortions. Like Trump was very pro-abortion. They're out here saying that they're anti-gay, but they're out here having gay sex in airport bathrooms and stuff. Like, this is the kind of stuff that people are doing, while on the public front, they're saying another thing. And he called me to the carpet, was like, prove it. Okay. Okay. Like, it ain't like I'm a liar in here just to try to make something up. So, I hit him with the facts and silence, like, because he knew, like, oh, like, kind of shattered my worldview there of how great Republicans are. And it's like, man, look, people are people. And when you get to that point where you understand people are going to do what people do, left and right doesn't make you who you are. It just doesn't. It's just a mask, which people use Christianity, as you say, patriotism, and everything else. They're all just masks. And now we're having to put one on in public because of this COVID. So see how I kind of tied that together there? Wrap that thing up, baby.
That was amazing, man. Hey, one of the one things that I want to say too is, it was about an article I read, but we talked about the nuances. Mental health was one of them. I've seen individuals get divorced and have marital issues that I never thought would be divorced. These are all real things, but one thing that is going to get ready to affect the world at large. We've started to see food lines in this country stretch for half a mile to a mile, which cars sitting in 2 to 3 wide lines conceptually, until you see it, is a very mind-blowing thing, man.
Yeah, for real.
Because these aren't individuals that are sitting in used cars. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There's Cadillacs, there's jacked up trucks. You know, these are individuals who would normally work that, hey, guess what, man? They're out of work from the oil field. I mean, they're having to sell things to survive. It's affecting everyone. Don't let anyone lie to you and say that it's not, but it is. But when you extrapolate that and you start looking at what it's doing from the world over, I read something that the number of people, this is a New York Times article, the number of people experiencing potentially life-threatening food insecurity in the developing world is expected nearly double this year to 265 million people. That is almost the population of the United States of America, give or take. You know, that's insane.
That's what I'm saying, bro. Like, bring this back to like that whole conversation about the church, man. All the money in America with these churches, and we're having food shortages, right? And again, I know some like Bethel's family here in Houston. They have, you know, Heavenly Hands is a food pantry that they've been running for years. And they feed thousands of people every single week, right? And I know that the Houston Food Bank is doing stuff and they get donations, but there should not be a wealthy country where there's a food shortage and churches are making out in the way that they are financially. I just don't, just me, that's me. I don't think that that is a worthy proposition to say, yeah, people are out hungry. we're gonna, you know, continue to operate the way we are. I don't see that as a worthy proposition, man.
Which is why if they're not willing to donate it and they're willing to walk away with those profits, they should have their asses taxed to oblivion to where they're going to have to spend that money.
Can you imagine how much the government would take in if they tax churches?
What is it, 10 billion or something like that?
It's crazy because not just like on income, but on real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And see, this is what gets you though. There was a Muslim community that started their mosque, and what they would do was the mosque would buy all of the property and sort of those sort of things, no taxes, and then the people would buy it from the church. And oh, they had a fit.
Yeah.
They were like, absolutely not. Like, no. And they're like, hey, we're following the rules. These are the rules. Right. But they just found a way to say, you know what? We as a church entity in America can do this. So we are. Right. But, you know, so the rules are set up a certain way and they don't want you to go outside of those rules. And when you do, it's a problem, you know. But yeah, man, I just, you know, one of my long desires, man, has been to be insurance for people, right? Make enough money to where people don't have to get into massive amounts of debt, man. My brother had an internal bleeding back in '03, and almost thought Joe was going to die, man. And, you know, like the amount of tens of thousands of dollars that he racked up from, I believe, a week in the hospital was just like, what? Like that right there, if they called for that, right, and they're like, hey, we have to do that, you know, they pressed it. Like, dude, I mean, if you don't make a lot of money, how are you going to pay for that much in medical bills, right? Like the system is set up in a way to where it's the profits are the focus. It just is. If you're a business, you're set up for profit. It just is what it is, man. There's no way around it.
You know, I used to see my dad do it as a kid, and I always tell the story that, I remember when we were at the swimming pool, and I saw two friends that lived in the nearby proximity that couldn't get in to swim because they didn't have 50 cents or a quarter or whatever it was. I think it was 50 cents. And I remember seeing my dad come up, and he asked him, why are you not swimming? He told him flat out. And for those that know, my father, he grew up extremely poor, man, extremely poor. And, he worked himself into a position to where he could be that insurance policy for people. But I remember him going into the pool and laying down a $50 bill and telling the individuals at the front desk, if that's not enough, let my son know. And I'll come back and pay it. And obviously it was more than enough, you know, because that's enough to swim
it was like $1 to swim back then.
For two people. So that always made an impression on me. And, you know, I saw my brother-in-law recently. He lost his house to the flood, you know, 2 years or several years ago in Houston, not only to the tax day, but to Harvey that hit directly after that. And he's one of those prideful individuals that won't ask for help. So it was automatic. Hey, come stay at the house. I know it ain't going to be a month or two. It's going to be a very long time. We'll make it work. But when you're able to do things that require you to live and meet a higher calling, man, it's the purest form of living as a Christian as you can get. You are living out what the Bible requires and asks you to do, what the religions ask you to do. And one of the most powerful things that you will ever be able to do is someone who's struggling, that you know who's struggling. Don't film yourself doing it. You don't need a Facebook post about it. You don't need to take a picture with the individual. Right. But go make someone's Christmas. Go make someone's birthday. Help someone meet a rent payment. And when you see that stress drop off of someone because they now no longer have to worry about it, you will immediately be in a state of gratitude. But when you get in that car and you drive home, you are going to cry all the way there. I can guarantee it. And being able to do that for someone, man, it's an immensely powerful thing, man. And
absolutely.
And the only thing that you leave them with is very simple. You give them whatever it is you're going to give them or donate, and you make sure that you leave them with the message of, you make sure that you tell your children, this is from you. This is from mom and dad. This is not from someone else. Nobody gave. This is from you.
That's our rule.
All they need to know is that you made it happen, because it's going to make an impression on them whether you realize it or not, man. I think John and I do that probably more often than not. He doesn't tell me about it. I don't tell him about it, because neither one of us need to know about it. But we know that you know, we will meet that calling, and we're about that life. And right now, when people are going hungry, man, BJ Garcia made a statement one time right after Harvey. And he said, I remember going to Refugio right after the hurricane hit. And he said, I had two ice chests, man, one completely full of water and the other one completely full of beer. And he said his son Braden asked him, Dad, why do you have an ice chest full of beer? And he said, son, sometimes when you give someone a cold beer, that's all they need to just completely open up to you. And a meal will function the exact same way, man. When you sit down and you're able to give someone that, it's not only the purest form of love, but it's also a comfort for them. And they are going to open up to you. And the only thing that you need to do is not be judgmental, listen to what they have to say, and see if you can help them solve their problem, man.
Yep. It's not always money either. Sometimes it's just time. Sometimes that I've had people, man, who told me, man, just thank you for just talking to me. That's it. Mm-hmm. They just needed somebody that they could unload on, man, and, you know, help them out in that way. You know, they got the rest under control. They just need to get it locked down. But, you know, it's a fascinating thing, man. But, you know, we're all about the helping people in disguise. That's just what we do, man. It's just one of those things, man, that I think I'll always do. You know, and I've taught the kids to do that as well. Just like, man, if somebody needs help and you can help them, man, which I believe was a big Jim quote.
Lauren had a friend of hers that needed help. And, you know, Jules and I don't ever ask for the fundraising stuff a lot of times, you know, because we really don't ever need it. You know, her team is doing some fundraising stuff right now, but, you know, and they've asked the kids to kind of fundraise it, but the majority of that stuff goes to help other people, you know, and within the team. But man, she had a situation to where she had given someone money for a softball glove because we thought we were going to actually be getting a glove that we ended up getting one, but it ended up being free, and it ended up being a completely different glove that was a bit better. And I asked her, I said, what are you going to do with that money? You know, it's $275, I think it was going to be the glove. And she said, can we donate it to help someone? So if that's what you want to do, do it. You know, I said, you're going to need a new bat pretty soon. You can take 100 of that. You can donate the other 175. And she goes, nah, donate all of it. And so she had a friend of hers that was selling beef jerky out of East Texas, and they had to sell something like $200 worth or something like that to help pay their team dues and whatnot. And Lauren reached out to him, and she told him flat out, I want to donate the whole thing. Your $200 is taken care of. Give the other 75 to someone. Because what happens if you don't meet that obligation, guess who it falls back on? It falls back on the parent, right?
Right.
So to be able to do that, man, and to have her realize those type of things that early on. Colton is a little bit younger. He doesn't really realize it yet. You know, we've kind of done it with some toys and things like that. But hey, man, make them realize that there's a higher calling in life, and if you're blessed enough to be able to be secure, it's your responsibility. It really is.
Yep. If you can help. Don't leave it to somebody else. Help. If you can help.
And then leave before the credit's given, man. You don't need that.
Nope. Don't need any of it. But man, this has been great discussion, bro. We are the Political Free Agents. Catch us Sundays at 2 p.m. and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. when life allows it. Because, hey, we got lives too. Things happen, man. But catch us on politicalfreeagents.com, where you can go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, hit the like button, stay in tune. That way you get notified when we go live. Also hit us on social media at PFA Podcast. Go ahead and follow us there. And whenever you follow us, say hi, speak to us, send us articles, send us links. You know, we love discussing things. May not make it on the show, but we love discussing different topics and seeing different worldviews and things that are happening across this world. So we'll catch you on Wednesday. We are the Political Free Agents.
One last thing before you go.
Go ahead.
I know he listens to the show, man. This is you know him. This is the closest thing that I've ever had to a brother. But my man Brian Hernandez is turning 40 on the 16th of this month. I am horrible with birthdays. I don't remember hardly anyone's birthday, but I will always remember Brian's birthday, man, because he was the closest thing that I had to a brother. So B, if you're listening today, man, I'm proud of what you become. I love you, man, and happy 40th, brother.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Hey, B's always been a good dude, man. Love playing against that dude in basketball back in the day too, man. You know, high dribble, come down. Yeah, man. Love some B, man. Good dude right there, man.
No doubt.
Great way to end it. We out.